This was a tough one to prepare. It's about privacy and security. And ever since I was involved 23 years ago with a company that was trying to develop applications on the internet, we tried to develop a web browser. Privacy and security was a big issue then. It's a big issue now. I've basically taken the attitude, I try to do what I can. I'll give you some guidance here of some stuff. It's not the ultimate guarantee. On the other hand, if you're not out robbing banks, if you're not out there trying to scam people, you probably don't have a hell of a lot to worry about. So, just to review the disclaimer, we're going to provide a review of proactive measures that will help protect your devices. Along with warnings about frauds and scams, the internet continues to be a challenge to hackers and those who would like to interfere with our use of the internet. And some of them like to just do it for the sake of doing it. But I'm sure with all this stuff about other countries, we won't mention the R word, there's more to what they're trying to gather than just that. But as a result, Caregiving Matters and myself, we cannot be responsible for any action, whether discussed in this session or otherwise, which result in loss of data, internet access, and other virus and spam attacks and fraud or scams, which may arise in the course of the internet's evolution. And here's the quote. We simply advise you to be aware that not everything is as it appears on the internet, to keep your guard up, and especially if you see something suspicious or incredulous. Nobody is giving away anything for free. So some of the things that you can do on a proactive sense. Operating system upgrades. Keep your operating system up to date. Part of the reason they do these upgrades is because somebody's found a security flaw. And it may require for you to stand on your head with one hand in the air and your right leg on the ground at the same time. But so it's sometimes obscure things that somebody has found, some geek has found. But when you see an operating system upgrade coming up, do it. Whether it's on Windows, which they do the first Tuesday of every month, they do an upgrade. Sometimes if something's urgent, they'll do it again. Mac occasionally puts some security, they've been pretty good, but they do occasionally have to put a security upgrade out. iOS for iPad, iPhone, you'll get, sometimes you'll see like there's been an iOS 10, a 10.1, a 10.2, a 10.3, and they may those may address small security issues amongst other things. And the same for Android. Secondly, and this is something that I do, two-step authentication. So I go into log into a website and I do the login, and then it comes up and says, we've sent a text message to your phone. You need to put a code in here. So you go to your phone, text messaging, and you've registered your phone with the various websites. So they know your phone number to text message to, or they send it as an email at your option. The point is, it goes to your phone, you send the code back, that authenticates that it really was you trying to get in. Okay? And I think this protected me in one case a couple of weeks ago. And there's several things. Yahoo, Facebook even has that set up, and Google has it set up, and so on. So password protection. Make sure your password for any financial sites is unique and not used for anything else. I know it's hard to keep track of them. There are many sites that will have default passwords, which might be like admin or password. Change those passwords right away when you start using the application. And you avoid using the common or obvious ones, and we'll see some examples in a minute. This especially applies to Windows machines that got security and antivirus utilities. Personally, I use Norton 360. It's a company called McAfee that has that. Microsoft has something called Microsoft Security Essentials. The thing is, you can only have one of them on a PC, but they do trap out and reject a lot of attempts to get at your site or get at your computer, especially if you're leaving it on all the time. Know your Wi-Fi network connection. If you do financial stuff at a Tim Hortons, best advice is don't. But given that, there will often be something come up and say, do you want to store this password or anything? Don't. Okay. But be very careful on those things. And especially if it says public Wi-Fi or something, and often a place will say, Tim Hortons will say, okay, our code or our identification says Tim Hortons, and therefore you can enter the password and know it's Tim Hortons. But if something says public Wi-Fi, be careful. So I've got some examples here for proactive protection. I said keep the operating system update. This happens to be a screen from a Windows update. Tells me Windows updates are available, and actually I told it to start downloading. So it says it's at 5% download. But now the problem with the ones on Windows and all of them is when you've done the operating system update, you are going to have to reboot your device. Okay, because it is the core software running your device. So that update has to be, sometimes when you do updates to applications and programs, especially on Windows, you also have to reboot. Here's one text message verification code, something I sent to Google, and it'll say, in Google it says G dash, enter the code. So I had to type in 575031 back on the web page where I was trying to log in. And this is part of Norton Utilities, Norton 360, but I'm saying use the antivirus and security software, especially on your Windows PCs. Because it's not just, it's blocking sites that they know are, they keep a log of these sites and so on that are bad and so on. So they got a whole blacklist of sites. And they know activities that could go on to try to get into your site and so on. This one's rather amusing. Somebody gathered, it was actually the 25 passwords to avoid, but only 10 would fit in here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that's imaginative. I can't be bothered to take even the most basic step to protect my personal information. Seriously, just go ahead and take it. Password. How many people use password? I failed to understand the question. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's because it demands you have 8 characters in your password. QWERTY. Oh, how do you come up with QWERTY? Anybody know? Look at your keyboard. Doesn't it say QWERTY in one row? ABC, 1, 2, 3. I'm a fan of the Jackson 5. Yeah. Count to 9. I'm a positive integer minimalist. I love that. Yeah, I can put in a bunch of ones. I'll put them a bunch of ones too. I managed to find one of the few passwords that are both easy to crack and hard to remember. How many ones was it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, because 7's my lucky number. I love you. Okay, whatever. Adobe 1, 2, 3. So, and there's another 15 on this site. The site's referenced down at the bottom here, and you can go or just Google bad passwords, and you'll get some stuff on this. So let's talk a bit about frauds. So that's sort of the proactive stuff. Talked talk a bit about fraud, spam, and scams. How many of you had a phone call saying, oh, there's a problem with your Windows machine, we need to look at it? Ask the person if he loves running a scam. That's my answer. They hang up in a hurry. So none of those will call PayPal, Google, Apple, Microsoft, whatever, the banks. They'll never call and ask you to give your login information over the phone, period, full stop. Okay? There's a thing called phishing emails, which mostly come from financial institutions. They want you to provide your login or other private information. Don't click on the links in those emails, and I'll show you something in the next slide. You'll see poor English grammar or spelling errors. And if feasible, and I'll show you the example in a moment, mouse over a link in the email and you can see what the URL is, the web address of that link goes to. And especially if it doesn't say PayPal, if it doesn't say TD Canada Trust, instead you get something that ends with a .ru, which means it comes from Russia. So there are telemarketing scams as well. Anybody had the Revenue Canada phone call? Yes. Yeah. I think they caught one of the perpetrators recently and knocked a lot of it off. But Revenue Canada never calls you asking you to pay. And they certainly don't want you to pay with iTunes cards, because that's one of the scams. Oh, go and buy some iTunes cards and give me the numbers. And I've mentioned the Windows, Mac, PayPal, Google, etc. issues phone call. There's some issue with your website. Again, hang up. Whoops. So you never give out a password over the phone or via email. Email's insecure. Don't put your credit card numbers on emails. I don't. If you need to transmit a credit card number, use one of the encrypted services like Skype or Wire or something where it's kept private. You only share confidential information by something that you know is secure or encrypted messaging, and I'm going to come to healthcare in a minute. You can share it on, say, text messages in Skype or this application called Wire. There are others, and WhatsApp claims to be secure. And again, back to the message I said earlier, email is fully open, so you don't, especially to somebody you don't know. If you don't know them, don't answer them. Don't even open their email. So here's some examples, and this is the one I wanted to show. I was talking about mousing over a URL. So underneath here, there was a logo that said, click here to continue or something. And you get this little message instead. If you hover over it with your mouse, this will pop up, and you'll see that it's not a URL for Apple. Okay? This is a scam email. Okay? Or, I talked about West African crime. I have this friend who's going to give me 950,000 euros from a charity donations from the Qatar. There's no charity in the Qatar that's giving away money to people they don't know. And this one was a text message. Bad English. Even the link it talks about Apple iPhone, but then it says Apple iPhone Pro. They left out the H in phone. Okay? But there's several things in that message that says you won £2 million, reference number for claim, email name and full mobile number and country too. And it's like Apple iPhone Pro at Outlook.com. That's not apple.ca. That's not apple.com. Okay? That's a scam URL.
And I bet you they get responders.
Well, what you can do is you can take those emails and forward them to reporting sites at Apple, at Google, especially the banks. They want to know about those because they'll at least, first thing they'll do when they get those is they'll put those URLs on a blacklist. But then they also have people who go check in looking for patterns and that sort of stuff. This is where things like artificial intelligence come into play because they can take a whole bunch of this stuff and just run it through a artificial intelligence thing that'll determine, oh, here's a pattern, and so on. We used to have phone books. Well, we still have phone books. We could look up and get your phone number. A lot of people don't do that anymore. What's one huge set of phone numbers you never see in a phone book? Can you look up my mobile phone number in a phone book?
Oh yeah, that's right, no mobiles.
There's no mobile phone numbers. So unless people give you their phone number, and that's why the phone numbers become an identifier. To sign up for the WhatsApp chat application, they want your phone number. And that's fine, they want your phone number, that's an identifier. So instead of phone numbers going away, phone numbers are becoming very critical to part of your personal brand. Okay. Again, for privacy, you do not have to give out your passwords unless it's somebody you trust. This question's a little more broader, is do you know who has your data? And you will find when you log into things, a lot of companies will explain, one, their privacy policy, and two, their security policy. And you have to accept those terms to continue to use the site. Okay? But, I happen to know Facebook has my data, Skype has some of my data, etc. But basically, and you can go in to some of the settings and some of the phones and so on, and some of the applications and turn off access to your data or whatever. But, on the other hand, if it doesn't have some of that data, it's not going to work. So there are things called, well, like I said, AdWords revenue generators, but you'll notice if you go into Facebook, if you go into Twitter, Instagram, you will see ads in that'll say sponsored or something. They have to be identified as ads. And if you click on those, they keep a record of that you have something, and whoever's site, so when you click on that, that's generating revenue for advertising revenue for Facebook. That's how Google and Facebook get most of their money, because people go search for things, and like on the side of my blog, I have a thing that puts up some Google ads. If you click on one of those, I get something and Google gets something. Okay? And what the Google ads people say, don't click on your own ads or we'll cut you off. You can't go and generate revenue just by putting an ad up. But we'll talk about the Facebook privacy settings soon. So let's talk a bit about privacy laws. First, Canada has one called Personal Information Protection and Electronic Documents Act, and that comes back to your asking. All commercial companies have to ask for permission to have your email address. And the really good ones will come back once a year to renew that permission. It's called PIPEA. Private sector businesses must have the approval. There are exceptions for not-for-profit and charity groups, like Caregiving Matters, associations, and political parties. So if Justin Trudeau wants to send me an email, he can send me an email, he's not violating the law. But it's largely to prevent spamming emails going out to everybody, Hudson's Bay announcing their big sale for today. Okay, you have to have approved use of your name for those commercial companies to use your email address to send you emails. And there are options. There should be an option at the bottom of each email that says unsubscribe. So if you get tired of it and want to get rid of it, click on the unsubscribe button. And that applies to ads in the States as well. I'm not sure what their law is, but one of the aspects of their law is there has to be an unsubscribe at the bottom. If it comes from some of these foreign country things, you won't find an unsubscribe link. So, healthcare. The Ontario Personal Health Information Protection Act. The common term in the US is called HIPAA, but fundamentally the idea applies here. The only people who can have access to your healthcare information, your doctor, any nurse that's looking after you in a hospital or medical professional. On the other hand, your doctor has to share that information with you that they have. I go to Life Labs for blood tests. I can actually go on their website and see what the result is of those blood tests. Finally, the do not call lists.
Yeah, how about that?
So just type in do not call Canada. It'll take you to the Canadian site for registering do not call numbers. So I have both my residential phone number and my cell phone number registered on do not call. There are exceptions. Again, charities, political parties, newspapers, and somebody you've got an existing business relationship in the previous 18 months.